Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives, and my next guest is a Grammy-nominated, prolific songwriter and producer. Now, you might remember her as a judge on American Idol back in the day, but she has written songs for CHRISTINA AGUILERA, Kelly Clarkson, Britney Spears, Pink, Lindsay Lohan, Ashlee Simpson. The list is truly endless. Hi, KARA DioGUARDI.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm happy it's a nice day and I can go outside and, any day you can go outside and be in the sun is a good day.
So I was telling you earlier how I have followed your entire career. And of course, we're going to get into American Idol and behind the music of some of your biggest songs. But let's start with how you discovered that you had this talent as a songwriter.
Well, that's kind of a funny story because I really didn't get into the business to be a writer. I wanted to be an artist. And at the time, you needed to come up with, back then it was a demo tape. So, which was basically a representation of, music that you would put on an album and kind of gave record executives like a look into, what you were all about. And I couldn't get anyone to give me songs because, I was like this 20-something-year-old person who was living with their parents, had an extra 15 pounds on them, had just gotten out of college because I really went to college to be a lawyer. And then in my junior year was like, no, I love music. That's what I want to do. And I'd been kind of denying it. So I couldn't get anyone to give me any songs. So I was like, all right, well, screw it. I just have to write it myself. And that's literally how I started writing. And I was probably 23 and I was horrible, so bad at it because I really didn't, I grew up in this kind of conservative environment and I didn't write songs. I didn't really know how to express what I was feeling. And so it took me years to kind of unravel that and sort of open up that side of who I was and do that kind of a deep dive into whatever was going on with me. And that's where great songs come from. So in the beginning, I was horrible.
People may not know that you actually have a great singing voice. There are so many YouTube videos of you performing the major hits you've written for, say, Pink, Kelly Clarkson. Did you set out to be an artist yourself?
Yeah, I think, I could always sing as a little girl. And when we'd be at events and things or birthdays, or my dad was a politician. He'd be like, Kara, now it's time to sing. And I would throw up my food because I was so nervous. And so I really didn't like being put on the spot like that. So I kind of stopped singing at a young age and denied that I could sing because I didn't like the idea that I could be called upon to sing at any moment. I kind of wanted to deny that the musical part of myself because I didn't want to be put on the spot. You start looking around and you're like, what am I going to do? And my best friend's mother was a lawyer and a very empowered woman. And she was super smart and made her own money and, made her own choices. And I really, really admired that. And I thought maybe I should be a lawyer. I thought maybe that's what I should do. But, again, I think it's hard when you're young to realize who you are and what you do want to do. And when you do have musical ability, that's kind of a gift because it's kind of a calling. When you decide that this is what I want to do, I want to write songs, I want to be an artist, and I want to dedicate my life to it, and I'm going to work harder than anyone and, try to make it happen. It is a calling. So in that way, even though I had denied it for so long, when I finally accepted that this is what I wanted to do, there was kind of nothing else I could do.
One of your first ins in the music industry, you had this connection somehow to Paula Abdul. I know the two of you wrote Spinning Around for KYLIE Minogue. So what was your in with Paula Abdul?
So what happened was that after school, after college, I, kind of announced to my parents that I was going to go into music. And they were like, what the hell are you talking about? We just spent all this money and you're going to go do what? And I said, well, I'm going to be in a garage band and then I'm going to waitress and I'm going to, try to figure out how I'm going to break into the music business. Sounded like a horrible plan, but there was a girl who I went to school with who ended up in the area where I lived. And she reached out to me because she needed a place to live. And so she came and stayed with my family, and at the same time was going and looking at jobs. And she got information on a job at Billboard magazine. And I was like, Billboard magazine? Now hold up, because that's like a music magazine. And she didn't end up taking the job. She wanted to take another job that she could make a little bit more money at. So I was like, well, hey, can you pass my name along? And she did, and I got that job.
Amazing.
And that kind of was where I learned everything about the music industry, you know, from the publishing world to the sync world to the way that the business ran. And when I had started writing songs after I left work, I did create a demo tape, and I gave it to Larry Flick, who was the dance editor at Billboard, and told him it was a friend of mine. Because I didn't want to put him in a weird position where he had to be like, oh, you're really good. It wasn't. And the next day he was like, oh my gosh, this girl is really good. Who is she? And I was like, oh, it's me. And he's like, come on, that's not you. I'm like, no, I promise it's me. And he became a big supporter and eventually gave that demo tape to Paula Abdul. And she was like, I want to work with this girl. It's pretty amazing. So the song Spinning Around was for Paula, actually. But then Paula didn't end up getting a deal done. So we gave it to KYLIE.
So that was just a song that you had written, and then it was just handed to KYLIE Minogue?
Well, so the label, I think that Paula was looking at signing and loved the song, and then she ended up not signing there. And I think they were like, can we give this to KYLIE? And I didn't know who KYLIE was at all, but I saw the video and she had like the best butt I've ever seen. And I was like, this song's going to be big.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I just want to like talk about some artists and can you like tell me how the writing sessions were? So for Kelly Clarkson, you wrote the bulk of what's on Breakaway.
Yep. So I mean, I loved Kelly from the minute I met her. I loved her. I think it's what everybody loves about her. She's just so authentic, and you just never know what she's going to say. You never know how she's going to react, but it's always going to be real. And she's just got a big heart, and she wears it on her sleeve. And I don't know, there's just something very comforting about knowing that those people exist.
So I know that you had a very heavy hand in the songs Gone and Walk Away. How did Walk Away come about?
Well, during that period of writing songs, I was in a not so great relationship. So, and I think that as a writer, for me, I needed to pull from my life. I don't think you need to be a performing artist to be an artist. And for me, that was how I expressed my artistry, was expressing my life. And at this particular time, I was going through kind of a weird relationship, and I think I stayed in it because it just like gave me so many songs. And I worked with this married couple. They were Canadian, and she had a baby, or they both had a baby. And so I remember the baby was in the room and the husband was in the room, and it was kind of a little distracting. And then at one point she got up to leave, and I was like, walk away. It was just this strange thing where she actually left the room, and I started, humming the song and putting, it was kind of, not that it's rappy, but it's got a rhythm to it. Mm-hmm. And so I was just like, walk away. And that was it. And we had the bulk of the song. And then Kelly came in and did like one of my favorite parts of the song, which is the bridge, because it's very bluesy and it gets very big. But, you know, for me, it was always based on where I was in my life.
Yeah.
And then how could I relate my story to somebody else's?
I love the bridge in that song. Something like "Not a boy who runs and hides."
I want to fight, to feel the burn of my desire. I want a man by my side, not a boy who runs and hides. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
You know, what is your take on the fan theory that artists need to be in emotional turmoil to write great music? So, for example, Kelly Clarkson, you know, recently went through this famously awful divorce and just announced Chemistry, which will presumably be the quote unquote divorce album. And of course, fans are clamoring. They've been clamoring for it for years because they know when an Adele or a Fiona Apple has gone through serious personal stuff, it does bring out the best in them as an artist.
Well, I mean, I can speak for my, you know, just based on my own experience that I've always found it easier to write during, you know, periods of angst or breakups or things that were on the more sad or depressing side. Just because, I don't know, for me, it's the greatest therapy. And when you're happy, I've always found it harder to write songs. It's just, you kind of want to examine those feelings when you're in a darker place than when you're in a lighter place. When you're in a lighter place, you really don't want to examine it. You just want to have fun, which is why I love, you know, someone like Ed Sheeran who can sit down and write a beautiful love song. I mean, I think it takes a certain type of soul to do that. But I think also, you know, it's funny about Kelly because I don't know if she'll do another, you know, sort of breakup song that could be accusatory or anything like that. I'm not sure because she's older now. And I think that the young, angsty stuff that she used to do earlier on, she's going to probably want to evolve a little bit, you know, into a more mature emotional state of how she would take that on. So it'll be very interesting to see. But I hope that it is a very personal record because I think that the more personal you are in your music, the more mainstream you are. Today, people really want to feel like you're telling them a story and they're in the room with you. The lyrics have completely changed in the last 20 years where it's much more specific. You know, writing used to be much more broader, like I love you. And now you say like I'd catch a grenade for you. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, but it's just a way more interesting way of saying it.
I love that. You also wrote the majority of Back to Basics with CHRISTINA.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
How did that collaboration come about? Like when I see that you know, I notice with a lot of songwriters, they either write one or two songs on an album or they write the majority of the album with the artist. So can you explain, you know, like, I guess, like, how did you get linked up with CHRISTINA that you were going to, I guess, hole up with her for a couple of months and really go deep and collaborate on this project?
So, and there was an A&R guy, who was the president actually of the label at the time, Ron Fair, who had signed CHRISTINA, who linked us up. And I went to her house and she kind of interviewed me. She kind of played tracks and then she was like, well, what would you do here? And what would you do there? And what would you do here? And that was like my vibe. Like if I heard a track, I could hear a melody in 2 seconds. Just music kind of moved me to hear melodies and sometimes at the same time a lyric. So she, you know, kind of put me through this test and then I didn't hear anything. And then she called and was like, hey, let's get together and write. And we just started writing and we got along really, really well. We were both Sagittarians. So we were both pretty straight up, no bullshit. And I think she felt that she could be vulnerable around me. And she knew that, you know, whatever was said in the room was always going to be sacred. Because I've always felt that way about my sessions, that they're kind of like therapy rooms and we can both share whatever we're going through. And that needs to be held holy almost. We kind of understood each other. There was sort of an unwritten code of, you know, whatever is going on in here is staying in here. And it just felt safe. I mean, we both had similar issues in some ways. And the fact that she could look at her life and I could understand it and relate to it was comforting, and it felt like, okay, this could be something. And also just, you know, the fact that we could trade off melodies and lyrics. And, you know, what I really loved about Christina too, is that she loved to do the things I didn't love to do. She really drilled down. Like, she was very specific on going over lyrics and changing words and then saying like what we had left to do on the song, like almost very organized. And I was more of a like, blah, 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 this is, and, you know, kind of all over the place. And she was hardcore. She was like, nope, we got to get that. This has to be done here. And we need to finish this, you know. I was like, all right.
She's a real pro. She's she is a musician's musician, an artist. Yeah,
she was very organized and very pro.
We have to talk about Ain't No Other Man.
Oh yeah. So it's so funny because when I heard that track, I did not like it. It was like,
no, when you say the track, are you talking about like, was the bed of music, like the production already done?
That was done. And the part was go, do y'all thing, honey. Do y'all thing, honey. And it kept saying that, do y'all thing, honey. And it kept like, the loop kept saying that. It was really irritating to me. And I just couldn't get my head around it because it just felt like the do your thing, honey. It almost felt like a commercial or something. And she just was so insistent. She was like, we got to write this. This is my single, da, 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 da. And I was like, how is it your single? There's nothing, we didn't even write anything over it. Almost to the point where I just got frustrated and was like, all right, I just come up with something. Like, I'll just throw something out there because I just couldn't think of anything. You know, I just got to come up with something, just throw something out there because she really does think this is her single. And I thought, ain't no other man who can stand next to you. And I don't know where it kind of came from. I think she was in this really happy place with her husband, or the guy she was marrying at that time, Jordy. And the do y'all thing, honey, ain't no man. Because I needed to do something that was in between the rhythms. And it just came out of nowhere. I think because I really had exhausted every option in my head of what could go over. Do y'all thing, honey, you know? And it stuck. She was like, yeah, I love that. And then then we collaborated on the rest of it. Yeah, it became her song. And I remember DJ Premier produced it, and he used to smoke a lot of weed, and I was definitely not a big weed smoker. And so I got so high during that session, and she was kept saying like, how was that? Was the vocal good? And I was like, girl, I don't know what's going on. I think it was good, but like, I can't. And I remember she was getting really pissed at me, but I was so high and I just couldn't communicate because I was like, yeah, it sounds really good, Christina, sure, come on out of the vocal booth, like whatever.
So funny. And then when you then see, so like Ain't No Other Man is a really good example, and also Walk Away, because those are two monster singles that come out where now like a video is, now there all these visuals get attached to the album. How do you react when you then see the video treatment, or like, I guess you wind up seeing the final product? Does it matter to you what the video looks like? How do you feel about the way it's then marketed to the public?
I mean, if I had to tell my younger self anything, it would have been to have appreciated those moments more and to kind of take notice of the videos and the marketing and do all that. But like, as a career songwriter at the time, you just were moving from project to project, and there was so much going on, and you had so many people wanting to work with you that you kind of, that was in the past and what was next. And also I feel like there had been moments where I had become disappointed almost by things that I'd seen that I didn't think were great. Or when I heard the final version, I was like, oh, I'm not sure. So I kind of had to let that part of it go. Yeah, and the fun for me was really writing the song.
Right.
Really being in the moment and expressing something that I was feeling. To me, that's always been the most fun. Even though I do A&R and I'm obviously a publisher, I still really appreciate the demo stages of things, like just listening to the first version and just the purity of it, and sort of that the idea is being born.
In the case with Pink, is Sober the only song the two of you have together?
We've written other songs and they were released by somebody, but they didn't make her album.
Okay.
So yeah, that was like a really great experience, I have to say. And I don't know that she works a lot with other people who do melody and lyric as much as maybe other artists, because she can do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that experience was mind blowing, because we hadn't seen each other, and the first experience we had together wasn't great. I think I was really nervous to work with her, and I kind of wasn't in tune or listening to what she wanted to say. I was more trying to like impress her. And the second time we worked together, we kind of just cleared the air about where we had both been. The first time, kind of mentally, she wasn't in the greatest place, I wasn't in the greatest place, and we kind of met in a sort of like, let's just see where this goes, in a very free place. And she had an idea for the end of the chorus, which was, how do I feel this good sober? And then we kind of wrote backwards from there. But she opened some wine, and I don't think I had eaten enough, or I don't know what it was, but like the first glass, I was like, oh, this is great wine. But the second glass, I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little woozy. And by the third glass, I was like, I'm going to throw up on Pink. So it was, kind of, again, it's funny to write sober, feeling drunk, but
Yeah.
that's how it happened. And I really didn't know what to think of the song when we wrote it. I think I had more fun writing it than anything I'd ever written, and it was just so easy to write with her.
Can you describe the writing process? Like, how did you co-write that song with her?
Well, it was like she would say a line and I'd say a line. It was like we were playing like a great game of drunken tennis, it felt like. We were collaborating, but it was writing itself. And I think we had both struggled with trying to numb ourselves in the past. And, when you are writing with someone who really gets what you're feeling, it just becomes this easy process. And it's like one of the best feelings in the world. So we kind of, we nailed it that day. And it was just, I didn't know we nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if she knew, but we also nailed it in the sense that we just had a great time,
Mm-hmm.
And it was, at the end of the day, it was like, what a great day.
And did she come to you with the idea that she wanted to, like, I guess for her, the song is about drug and alcohol abuse and how you numb yourself with these like external things. Did she come to you with that idea? Like, I want to write a song about that?
Well, just from the last line, how do I feel this good sober? It kind of tipped off that this was going to be the song where you were describing that the real world was hard. It was much easier when you were kind of removed from it. So I think that kind of tipped off the rest of it. And that there was a track too. This producer Danja had written this track. And so that was sort of a skill set of mine, that I needed to hear music and I needed to hear a beat. I've never been great at just writing with like a guitar or piano. I mean, I've done it, but I love listening to a beat. It kind of inspires me in a way that just a pure instrument doesn't. So for that song specifically, she really wanted me to listen to the track and be involved. She wanted kind of a second opinion on that. So yeah, I mean, that's how we did it.
Mm-hmm. In the case with Pink, you really just like sat down to write this one song with her. You weren't like writing the rest of the album with her, versus like a CHRISTINA or Ashlee Simpson, where you're really holed up with that person for months.
Right.
How do you?
I would have loved to have been holed up with Pink for months.
I think we all would.
Yeah.
It's
so fun, but yeah.
If you're just writing that one song, so maybe you're spending like a week or so with that person or less. Like you described co-writing as dating. Like, mm-hmm. How do you form that feeling of intimacy with somebody when you're writing a really personal song, or sometimes does that not happen?
Well, sometimes you don't. You know, some people you just get in the room and you're like, yeah, this isn't going to work out. But with Pink and Christina, they were both very strong personalities. And I had a strong personality. So I don't know, there was just an immediate kind of, I felt like, oh, I knew this person and they knew me. We just got each other. And I think that's necessary. And the fact that, you know, there weren't a lot of women that you could write songs with back then. So I'm thinking maybe it was just easier to kind of open up about, you know, things like anything, anywhere from sex to bad relationships. You know, it's probably easier to reveal those things to a woman than a man. And a lot of the men that they were working with were older men. If I look back in that time, there were not a lot of women songwriters. There was Linda Perry, there was, you know, Diane, there was Shelley Peiken. There were very few compared to the market now, which is, you know, many, many women. So I think there was a comfort in knowing that, you know, you could get in the room and just vibe. Mm-hmm. I feel safe about that.
And when you're writing like the bulk of material for an album, is it sort of just like the more material you write, the more likely you are to come up with a hit?
Definitely. Okay. I feel like it is a numbers game. It's like the more songs you write each year, the more likely you are to have a big song, which is partially why I don't write. I wouldn't call myself my primary job anymore, writing. It's more I publish and I do the A&R side of music. I would definitely say that the more you do something, it's like sales calls. The more you're, you know, making those calls, the more apt to have a sale you are.
Yeah. Ashlee Simpson. So this was interesting because your sessions, I'm sorry, I know you wrote Pieces of Me. And this was interesting because the writing of the album and the recording of the album was documented for MTV.
Right.
What was that like?
That was really weird. I got to tell you, like, you know, having cameras there when you're working. I mean, I had to tell them, you guys got to leave. I can't write like this. It's just not, it just did not feel safe and intimate at all. So they would allow us to, you know, kind of do some stuff on our own, and then they could come in and we could reenact it. But writing a song in front of a camera was not for me.
Feels like I can finally rest my head on something real. I like that.
KARA came on to write Pieces of Me with me and John.
I'm left side, is this new right? Gonna dance and sound and don't die. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, I wanted to be about you. Yeah, exactly. Just the pieces of me. I like that a lot. It's cool. It's
groovy.
Oh, yeah. So what were you?
I definitely loved the idea that we were kind of tucked away in some studio and, you know, we could just like share our deepest, darkest secrets and write about that. So yeah, was not a fan and definitely asked the camera people to leave multiple times so that we kind of flesh out some ideas. But it was like, yeah, I mean, it was this strange, I had done a record for Jessica Simpson. So then there was Ashlee Simpson. I didn't really know much about Ashlee Simpson, but
which song did you write for Jessica?
A Little Bit, it was called.
Oh, was that on Irresistible?
I think it's on that. I love to say I think. It feels like another lifetime ago, where I was singing that song a cappella to Tommy Mottola and like hitting my hip as the drum. What I loved about Ashlee is she was just so free. You know, she was that girl that definitely was a rule breaker, and she was the antithesis of what I was at her age. So I really enjoyed working with her because I got to kind of go back and be 16 or 17 again and think about the side of me that wanted to break the rules and wanted to be more sexually free and, you know, all those things that I couldn't as a good, you know, Catholic girl growing up. So I had a ball definitely wrote songs, drank wine. You know, she wasn't drinking wine, but I was like, when she'd leave, I'd be like, okay, I've got to remember what it feels like to be 17 and, you know, to be with that boy, or, you know, to feel like I want to tell my parents to fuck off or whatever it was. And it was a really fun project that had a pretty tragic end with the Saturday Night Live moment.
Did you watch that live?
I didn't, but I remember like setting my alarm, or I think I was really tired that night, and setting my alarm for it. And I barely got up to watch it, but I did see like something go wrong. And I think I just was like, I'm going back to bed. I can't deal with this right now. this is not good. But you know, I really felt badly for her because she, you know, that moment kind of redefined her career. And it was all because she, you know, lip synced. And I don't know, it felt kind of unfair that one mess up could really destroy everything she had worked hard for.
Because the songs on Autobiography and the follow-up to that, those two albums, I regularly listen to them, like at the gym. Like, they're both like undeniable like classics.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet.
I mean, the music is so good.
I mean, they're just, I don't know if they're classics, but I definitely feel like they were a thing, you know, and she represented the anti-perfect thing that was going on, you know, and there was a lot of that perfect thing that was going on.
When the Ashlee Simpson show premiered, did you watch it? Were you like, okay, let's like watch this thing that we were filming?
I did. And I was sort of like, that's not exactly how that song was written. Or, you know, it was definitely, you know, there was a lot of rewriting of things, of the real history, which was fine. You know, I understand the way those shows go, but I was quite naive back then.
Were you shown on this show at all, like in any of those writing sessions?
I feel like very minimally. It was really about her and the producer, which was quite heartbreaking to me because I was just kind of still starting out. But I get over it pretty quick, you know. I just happen to be writing songs for a living.
Yeah. You had a very heavy hand in both of Lindsay Lohan's albums. You wrote a couple songs for Paris Hilton. Like, what's it like working with those types of people who aren't musicians? They're not, you know, these are sort of like stunt projects. Paris more so than Lindsay. But like, what's that like?
Well, so Lindsay actually had a really good voice. She was a raspy kind of a rock thing. And I remember having to go out to the set of the Herbie cars and literally record her on her lunch breaks. And I would wait around for hours and then she'd have like 15 minutes to record. So it was kind of crazy. And I remember thinking like, she didn't, you know, these people don't have much of a life when they're that successful or they're that famous. And it struck me as, I felt sad for her. You know, I felt like her life wasn't her own and she was a young girl and there wasn't a lot of support there. And so I almost felt like I wanted to work with her to help her express what she was going through. And because I felt like, you know, I was a responsible adult kind of in the middle of a lot of chaos. So I was sort of drawn to that, just spiritually feeling like maybe I could help this girl. Paris was more like a fun thing. It was like, I was working with Scott Storch. He was a big producer at the time. And I loved the idea that I was working with these really big creatives who, you know, had tremendous hits under their belts. And I kind of was doing it more. They were doing it. And I was like, well, if they're doing it, I guess I can do it, you know. And to her credit, she worked really hard. You know, she's not obviously wasn't born with a huge voice, but she could, you know, she was on pitch and she really did work hard and she was a pro. You would say to her like, do this, do that, do this. That wasn't right, you know, and she took it. So I guess it's at a certain point, I kind of never got too precious with being a writer for other people. you know, was I going to say no to this person but take on that person? And, you know, if it allowed me to express what I was feeling and help someone else express what they were feeling and put it out into the universe, kind of looked at that as my job. It was more like, I'm a songwriter, but I'm really here to help this person communicate their story. And that's what I loved about it.
You weren't judgmental about who you worked with.
I mean, because how could I be judgmental when I like also wasn't really trained? I couldn't really play any instrument that well. And, you know, I was just, to me, my job was to go in there and help you tell your story.
Now, what's interesting, you wrote 2 songs on Britney's album Blackout, which in a lot of ways, it changed the sound of pop music. Like from 2007 on, I feel like that changed the sound of pop music, and Justify, like the stuff that Justin Timberlake was doing. Did Britney have anything to do with, like, I know you wrote Ooh Ooh Baby, and what was the other song you wrote off Blackout?
Well, actually, the other one was Heaven, and I think I produced it. So I actually produced her vocal on it.
You produced Britney's vocals on these 2 songs on Blackout?
Really fun, I have to say.
So talk to me about, I mean, the creation of Blackout there's a lot of mythology around this. Please.
I mean, she just has this way of knowing how to use her voice to give it that iconic Britney thing. So, you know, you would tell her, well, give me more of this and give me more of that. And you just started to see how the actual tone or what you hear on the radio was created by Britney, because she can just manipulate her voice to sound, you know, like all this kind of stuff that she does.
So that's all manufactured, that baby voice. Like, she can actually sing normally. And is that something that producers want her to do, so it has that iconic Britney sound?
I don't know that it's completely manufactured. I just think that it's more like, you know, it's different ways of saying things. Like, I can go up in my register, I can stay in my chest voice. You know, if you're asking her to do certain things where maybe the consonant needs to be hit more, she naturally would do things with her voice. So I don't want to say that she manufactured it. I think she was aware that there was a tone. And the thing is that she really was another pro, like would sit in there and just do what you asked her to do. No attitude, a sweet girl. Like, and I think that just from the times that I sat with her, unaware to some degree of how iconic she was, which was quite charming. And also, you couldn't help but think that the fame was so much greater than the person. You know, it was like too much. It's like too much for anyone to bear, kind of. I remember there was one time when I was working with her and I had to like put something over my head and run out so they thought it was Britney, but she snuck out the other way. It was just like crazy ways of living that felt very constraining, you know? So I think she probably liked to be in the studio because it was rather just concentrating on one thing as opposed to worrying about being, you know, photographs being taken and this and that. And, you know, again, it was another glimpse into these young, famous women and what a hard life that was. And I think people, you know, they think, oh, you're famous, you're rich, you're that, but it's a lot of work. Just their lives were not their own. And in a weird way, being on the inside of that, I kind of realized that I had made the right choice to become a songwriter and not an artist, because I really didn't like that the idea that I wouldn't have my own life. It would be, right, you know, the public would own it. And I think that there must be so many highs, you know, when you're sitting there and you're singing in front of so many people and you're so adored, but that can turn. And that's, you know, that's a hard way to live, I think.
Just one final thought on Britney. I was saying how, like, there's so much mythology around the way Blackout was created. Like, I think a lot of people don't know that she executive produced that album. That's the only album of hers that she EP'd. Since you produced a couple of songs for her for that album, just what can you say just about that? Was, you know, it was 2007. What can you say about the creation of that body of work that would go on to impact pop culture in such a long-lasting way?
Well, you know, I have to say, at that moment, she had Teresa LaBarbera Whites, who was an amazing A&R person, helping her with that record. And I think that Teresa really empowered her to, you know, be more of a part of the process of the record. And I think Britney had always had, you know, she knew what she sounded good on. She knew what she liked. And I think even more so on that record, she made those choices. It was one of the records she didn't do solely with Max Martin. I'm not even sure if he was on the record. So, you know, she had more ownership, it felt, of it. And I think that was good. You know, Britney was so young when all this started that there had to come a moment where she kind of was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And, you know, I have nothing but amazing things to say about her. She was a doll, and just really worked hard and was respectful. And again, I don't think that she even wanted to take in how famous she was or how iconic she was.
Very down to earth.
Very down to earth.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think she didn't want to lose that part of her. I mean, I wish her the best, and I would hope that, you know, she's getting to enjoy her life because she worked hard and earned that, you know.
What would you say was like the best writing session of your life, or like the definitive highlight of your career?
I would say it was the session with Pink, just because it was so fun. I mean, I was drunk and like hanging out with Pink, and she's just so fun. And we wrote the song. It was effortless, and it was a beautiful day in Malibu. It was just like a perfect day. And it kind of ruined every other session. You're just like, that is the best ever. I mean, and I've had some great sessions. I mean, you know, working with Kelly was great, working with Christina, but this specific day is just everything aligned. And I would say that part of why I don't write as much anymore is that you have to write so many songs to get to those other songs that like are very impactful. And as you get older, you don't want to, you know, give up 200 of your days to write kind of mediocre songs to get to those 10. You know, there's other things to do with your, and, you know, when you are a competitive songwriter, it's 24/7. It doesn't stop.
All right. We have to talk about American Idol. So I know that you had like never really watched the show before you got the job as a judge.
I just didn't, because like my life was American Idol. It was like all I did was listen to music and singers, and, you know, so I really didn't even know the format. I remember kind of studying it before the first season that I was on. And it was really hard to critique kids on the spot. When you're in the industry and someone plays you something, you're not necessarily sitting there and critiquing it in front of them. You're kind of just listening, and then you're like, oh, okay, you know, like, so who's your lawyer or whatever. And being on American Idol, because I had to give instant feedback, it made me really listen to music in a different way. And I always felt like I wanted to give back some sort of constructive criticism for these kids.
How did you get chosen for the job? Like, how did you even get up for American Idol? I mean, of course, there's a history of you wrote all those hits for Kelly Clarkson, and you had this relationship with Paula Abdul in the past. But how all of a sudden did that happen?
Well, Paula didn't even know that I was going to be on the show. I think there were a few things. I think that they felt like they wanted to shake up the panel. They didn't want to bring in a celebrity because they thought maybe that would be off-putting. I think they knew that I'd known Paula. I think Simon liked the idea that maybe we would like catfight on the show or something, which was totally not my vibe. Mm-hmm. So when that didn't happen, I think he was a bit disappointed. But, you know, having someone kind of break up the old band was a really weird position to be in for me. And I didn't quite understand how beloved the judges panel was. So I think I was kind of the scapegoat of the production team kind of thinking like, okay, how can we mix this up? And by bringing someone in who was, you know, a songwriter and well respected in their industry, it felt like the path of least resistance. But I definitely think the first year was really tough for me because I was getting used to the show. I'd never been on live TV, and it was quite scary at times. You know, it was an animal unto itself, American Idol. So, yeah, what was I doing there? Believe me, there are times I asked myself, I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? But they wanted an industry voice. I think they wanted to bring, not that the show wasn't credible, but kind of that insider opinion.
Yeah.
And, you know, if they were looking for a woman, there weren't many around. I can tell. It was sort of like, we got these three.
Yeah. What's amazing about your season, your first season, is Adam Lambert came out of your season.
Yes.
And that was such like a formative time for me. That was like 2009. And he was the first like flamboyantly gay contestant on any one of these shows, and he was so impactful to the gay community, and then his music on top, his voice is phenomenal, and the records that he wrote and sang were fantastic as well. Like I know you worked on a song of his. I know you worked on Strut for his first album. Like, what can you say about just like meeting Adam Lambert when they first show Adam Lambert? He's not in the glam. He's got like red hair.
I had to do a test for the studio, and in the test they put a TV in front of me and they would show a contestant and then stop the TV and ask me to critique it. And I was like, I failed it because it was just like, you're asking me to talk to a TV. This is so strange. So they rerouted a bunch of contestants to this kind of like fake, not fake, it was an audition for them, but they put me in as a judge. And it was me and the two producers. And he walked in and they were like, no, Simon's going to destroy him. It's not going to be good. And I was like, no, he's really good. We have to keep him. There's no way you can knock him out. And they listened to me, but he kept doing this weird thing with his eye that was like very dramatic. And so I remember saying to him, I'm like, you got to not do that eye thing when you come through, or else Simon will like, it's not gonna, you need to chill that out. But he literally would not have been on the show if I hadn't been like, no, he's really good. We have to keep him.
That's unbelievable. Why did they think that Simon would?
I don't know. They thought he would annoy Simon, which first of all, I could care less about that. I was sort of like, okay, Simon's annoyed so many times a day that I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad that I went against the grain there.
Why do you think American Idol has produced so many stars, yet The Voice has been on just as long as American Idol and has not produced one star?
Yeah, see, to me, it's all about the songs. You got to pick great songs. If you're not picking great songs, you're not going to compete with the iconic artists that are out there today. And, you know, that was something that I thought a lot about when I was on American Idol, was there wasn't a lot of mentoring going on for these kids afterwards. You know, it was like the show kind of put them on, gave them a platform, and it was like, okay, the show's over, everyone goes home. And these kids had really done a lot, you know, for the benefit of the network. And so I actually started a nonprofit where we give kids a platform to tell their stories through music, but we mentor them. So they get summer scholarships from Berklee College of Music, and we do workshops. And then all the money they raise through these vocal competitions goes back to youth. So to youth suicide or pediatric cancer and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, you know, all in all, like I really did, my experience in American Idol really did shape the last 10 years of my life, because I've really loved mentoring kids. And that came from being on that show.
I love it.
I have such a different experience now with them. I think that the show showed the personal side of everyone and the struggle to be an artist. And you kind of lost sight of that when you were on the inside of the industry.
Final thought on American Idol. Can we talk about the finale where you come out as Bikini Girl?
Oh my God, that was so ridiculous. They had been on me to do that for 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm not doing it.
So wait, walk everybody through this, what you did.
They wanted me to sing. Katrina would start singing, then I would come, they'd cut her mic, and then I would sing, and then I would rip my dress off and be in a bikini. And I was like, are you people crazy? Like, I'm a professional, I'm like a businesswoman and a songwriter. Like, I can't strip down to my
so like but tell the backstory, how like there was this girl who was trying out and she was like in a bikini, they nicknamed her Bikini Girl, and then they brought her back for the finale. Yeah, like give the context.
Right. Okay, so there was this contestant and she came out and sang in a bikini, which was actually quite smart because you knew she was going to get TV time, especially from the guys, Simon and Randy. So, but she wasn't very good. And then when Paul and I were like, no, the guys, Simon and Randy were like, oh, come on, dog. You're just like, you're jealous kind of thing. And I was like, I am not jealous. I think she has a beautiful body, but not so much with the singing. So at the finale, they thought it would be really fun to bring her back and to have her sing, cut her mic, and have me come out behind her singing, and then I would rip my dress open and have a bikini on. And my thing was like, first of all, you don't even know what I look like in a bikini, okay? But I could have like, a deformity and you wouldn't even know. Like, you're just going to put me on there? Are you going to, because I'm certainly not giving you a test, right? And we're not going to do a test scenario. So it was just very, very strange. And they were just on me and would not let up. And everything in my being was like, I would not do that to another woman. I would never do that. I would never. And, I was a businesswoman and a songwriter, and like stripping down in my bikini, it was just so weird. I just was like, no. And then they were just so persistent. Finally, I was like, well, if you give money to my charity or charity of my choice, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. But you have to say that that's why I did it. Because I want people to understand that this was not like this will be so fun. I'm going to go and I'm going to, play this prank on this woman and show my body off. And, it was ridiculous. But, I mean, it was quite funny.
Yeah, so good.
If it wasn't me, I would have laughed probably. It was me, and I was definitely like, oh, God, cringing.
Final thing that I just wanted to chat with you about. So you were on a Bravo show that I watched every episode of called Platinum Hit.
Oh God, yeah.
Tell me about this. It was you and Jewel, and it was a songwriting competition. And I remember, in fact, there was one guy, Johnny something, that eventually he performed here at Rockwood Music Hall in the city, and I would like go to see him live occasionally. And he was on that show. How did that happen? Like, what was it like doing a show for Bravo?
Well, the thing with that, I don't think that was kind of the Bravo show that they're known for. And I always kind of thought, watching people write songs that you don't know is probably not riveting TV. I think that it had kind of a look into what it's like to be a creative, but they were trying to get like drama from they were trying to pull drama from creatives. And I don't know necessarily that the drama that people are used to is going to be like from a bunch of creative kids, but it was fun to be on something with Jewel. She's a great artist and we had written songs together. It was a great sort of bridge for me from Idol to a show that did allow me to go in and hang out with the contestants and sort of help them more than I could on Idol, because they wouldn't allow you to really speak to the kids on Idol.
Really?
Yeah, no. So yeah, it was an interesting show because I think there was something there, but it didn't truly dial in for the audience. And I think it probably would have made a better YouTube kind of thing right now, where kids who are really interested in songwriting get to see the process.
Was Andy Cohen involved in it at all?
No, I think I went on his show though once. I think I did like one of those, yeah, with a housewife or I don't. I think I watched The Housewives a little bit in the beginning, and my husband was so not into it that he kind of like banned it. He was like, "You're gonna watch that, you're gonna go in the closet." And I was like, you know what? Nothing's worth putting baby in the closet. Not happening.
That's amazing. So yeah. I know that like your publishing house, you've put out music for like Bruno Mars and Eminem. What does that mean exactly? Like owning a publishing house that releases, like, can you explain that to me? I truly don't know what that.
Yeah. So what I do is I find talented songwriters and artists, and I sign them to my company, and then I help them with their careers. So it's almost like, because I have written songs and can hear really good songs, I'm finding the next generation of talent and ushering it into the industry.
So like the Bruno Mars and like Monster, the Eminem song. So how is that through your publishing house?
So I pay a certain amount of money to this young writer, and that helps them live. And then I introduce them to other writers and producers so they can keep writing and creating those songs. So it's almost like I become an agent, but it's more than an agent, because you're doing collaborations, you're hooking up sessions, you're just believing in somebody from the very beginning. And, right now there's a writer called John Bellion who wrote the new Miley Cyrus song. He wrote Memories for Maroon 5, the new Justin Bieber song, Holy. And it's just great to see somebody with talent in the beginning and believe in them when everyone's sort of like, I don't get it. And then finally one day. Same thing with Ingrid Andress. I signed her 5 years ago, and now she was just nominated for CMA Best Artist.
Wow.
And so, that's like kind of my new joy. And I would say that while I was doing it while I was an idol, I now am really looking at young talent before anyone knows about it. And that is truly what I love the most.
Final question that I've always wondered about from a songwriter. For example, Sober is written by you and Pink, period. And then there's like a producer on it. Why are there some songs that have 10 writers on them?
Right. So that's like a new thing kind of, because what happens is people get a portion of the song that they love, and then they want to beat the verse, or they want to beat the pre-chorus or whatever, and they send it out to other people, and then other people add a little something or change a line or change.
What do you mean they want to beat the? What do you mean they want to?
They'll say like this: we like the chorus, we don't love the verse. So could somebody else take a stab at it? And that's what happens, is you get so many people's perspective on one song, and then basically they choose the best, and those people end up on the song. So actually a song can be created one day, and you'll get like the chorus out of it, and nobody likes the verse, and then it goes to somebody for the verse, and then they don't like the bridge, and somebody else writes the bridge, and then all of a sudden you've got the producer changed a chord, so now he's on it. It's like, it's almost like the bastardization of
songwriting. Like, how is that songwriting? That's like manufactured in a lab.
Right. Well, it is, but at the same time, it's like, most songwriters and industry people will tell you, well, if it's not going to chart and it's not going to be a big song, the songwriter's not going to make any money, and it's not going to be good for the label either. So they're kind of like saying every part of the song needs to be amazing, which, yeah, it is. It's strange. I mean, there are a lot of people that don't do that though, Ed Sheeran and Billie Eilish. So,
I mean, can you imagine if like this is how Paul McCartney and John Lennon work? It's like, this is not the way music is created.
Oh, I agree with you. Listen, some days I see the credits, I'm like, I think I have to turn the page. It's like, there's so many that you got to go to the next page.
Kara, this has been so...
You're awesome. Good questions too.
Thank you. This has been so interesting. Where can people, if they're interested, if there's a young songwriter out there and they're interested in like getting in touch with you for help, like how can people contact you?
Well, they can go to our website, Art House Entertainment, and I think it's arthouseent.com. And they can also go to my nonprofit, which is inspirednation.org, if they want to be part of our upcoming competitions or learn more about what we do, they can go there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Guys, you can follow me, Jess XNYC. Follow the show account, Hot Takes Deep Dives. Kara, you're the best.
You.
I mean, what a
Thank
legacy.
You.
You're amazing.
Fun. You're great.
Thank
It was
you.
really fun to hang out with you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.